Hello, you're watching and listening to the episode of Leaders and Engineers. We're broadcasting from Estonia. I'm Nader Yusupov. Today our guest is an experienced engineer and engineering manager, a bachelor and master of science in mechanical engineering with about 20 years of experience in mechanical engineering, reliability engineering, and energy engineering and management. He was an engineer and manager in such companies as Siemens and Ericsson. Now he is living in Estonia and working as an engineering manager for Ragn-Sells OSA Project, the project where he is working on a circular economy to turn the oil shale ash hills of Eastern Estonia into calcium carbonate, a useful and valuable raw material for industry. Please meet William Buescher.
Hi.
So how do you do?
Good. It's winter's almost over.
Almost.
Finally.
Well, probably living in Estonia, when do you say this winter is over? When it's like above zero or?
Well, I thought winter was already over a couple weeks ago, but it seems it's not quite over yet, but it's okay. The good thing about Estonia is that they have the 4 seasons. So, you can tell the difference between them, and it's each one has their own feeling. So, yeah.
Which one is your favorite?
I mean, it has to be summer, right? But I also really like winter. Spring is nice. Fall is maybe, autumn is maybe the least favorite because, then it's getting dark. And
I think if you like winter in Estonia, then you're basically okay with the dark and times and when it's a cold.
Yeah. Yeah, the dark is maybe the hardest part. But the cold doesn't bother me so much. It's better if it's cold than, 2 or 3 degrees plus, because then everything's frozen and dry, which is nice.
So now I will suggest you to try out a job interview, and we will imagine that there is some fictional company and that you're applying for a leadership position in that company. But it's not just random leadership position, it's engineering department, and you will be dealing with the engineering team. So focus on the engineering, leadership in engineering. And after some time, I will tell that, job interview is over. And this will be the time for you to share your feedback, how you liked the interview, what you like, what you didn't like, and how's it correlating with your previous experiences.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Hello, William.
Hi.
Thank you for applying for the position in our company. It's a leadership position in our engineering department. And our company is producing a golf club for seamless relief whenever and wherever you want. You will see this on your screens, but I will show to William how it looks like. So basically, when you're playing golf, and then there are no bushes, and but you want to relieve, you were drinking a lot, then you just unscrew this seal, clip the privacy towel, and discreetly relieve yourself, and then get back into the game.
Amazing.
I'm glad you like it. But why did you apply for this position?
Well, being an engineer is about inventing new things, and this is exactly the type of thing that I've been working for and towards for my whole career. I think the experience speaks for itself, and that's kind of why I've done everything that I've done up until now, is to be able to work on exciting projects like this. And but like I said, the experience, I think, speaks for itself, and we'll talk about that. But for me, it has to be about the passion, that you really have a drive and a motivation to do what you're doing, other than just having a job, And for me here, well, besides the connection to the engineering and inventing new things like this. Seems very novel and useful. But I'm also like I like sports myself. I don't play golf anymore, but I used to as a child, and but I play other sports, so I'm really ready to work on and contribute to anything that has to do with sports.
What are those other sports that you're playing?
Yeah, I play. Well, growing up, I was playing soccer, football, and American football, and baseball, and basketball. But basically, what I'm playing today is mainly basketball, and doing some yoga. Not currently, but I'm looking for the right time and place and teacher. So I'm looking to get back into it. Yeah.
Quite many different things you have tried, and definitely yoga stands out from that. Why have you decided that you should go to yoga?
Oh, I like it. It just makes me feel good.
You tried this for a long time? Or?
Oh yes, I was. I mean, maybe I was going for maybe a couple of years, like maybe once a week or so. And yeah, I really like it.
Do you think that it has a clear direct impact on your work? What the kind of sports you do, and how often you do this?
I think it's kind of like an individual thing. It's up to each person. For me, it helps me to de-stress a little bit. And doing sports is kind of like a meditation for me also. When you start doing it, then your mind goes to the game, which is one reason why I like playing all these ball sports, because it's like a game and a competition, and you're focusing on that. I don't like going to the gym because for me it's boring. But that's also a challenge that I have with yoga also, because it's not like that. So it's about this kind of being in the present and kind of not thinking too much about the future, maybe. Yeah.
Do you know what kind of yoga is that? Or
I think Vinyasa. I think it's probably the most popular type of yoga, at least in Estonia.
Well, I know what you mean. I also tried last week, basically.
Oh yeah, how did it go?
Well, it was pretty intensive. You think that it's static, but it's to get into these positions, it really makes you sweat, work hard, and but I like the peace of mind that it brings.
Yeah.
But also speaking about the sports and the different activities you do, would you rather do this alone, or to use it as some kind of escape from work, or you're fine with using this as a team building? You would rather invite your team to go and play with you?
You mean the sports?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we can play together also, the team, but it can sometimes be complicated. People in teams, they're very different, maybe but it's always possible to try, or you choose maybe not something like basketball, maybe something like volleyball. It's maybe a little bit easier to start playing, maybe. Or of course the classic team event, bowling. That's a good one.
How did you call it?
Classic.
Yeah,
it's bowling. It's I think often teams are going bowling together because, again, it's like very easy, relatively easy, and most people can throw the ball down there and hit something.
If you look at your experience, you were leading quite many companies in many different companies. You were leading different departments, and from your experience, have you had any team buildings? And if yes, then what was those team buildings that you had?
Yeah, well, actually, I was only leading one department at Ericsson, reliability engineering, but all kinds of team events. One time we went sailing. We've been, of course, when I was working in Germany, we would go out to the restaurant and have some beer, maybe this type of event, or going to play mini golf. It's also kind of something that anyone can do.
Right.
Or going hiking, doing some type of more like active thing. Just going out to dinner somewhere, having a nice dinner. Things like this.
Do you think this was essential, or it was more like nice to have? I mean, nice to have towards the building trust or working better together.
I think it's pretty essential. I mean, sometimes it doesn't matter as much, what you're doing. It's just having that time to where the whole team is together, and it's may or may not be like related to work. Probably, there's these different kind of skills that you can train or build in your team, and just doing something together and it having nothing to do with work and not even talking about work. This is also good because it helps you relate to each other on a little bit more personal level in the team. So then it's easier to work together when you go back to work. Yeah.
So if one thing those team buildings, but I don't know, did you have this kind of practice of having face-to-face, one-on-one meetings on a regular basis?
Yes. Before I was a manager, and then once I became a manager, and I've taken a number of different leadership trainings, and it's always kind of stressed in there that this is really important, and I absolutely agree that it can depend on the team too, how big the team is. If you're in a smaller team where you're talking anyway with your manager basically every day, then maybe it's not as necessary. But it's important that as a manager or as an employee, that you're able to have this time to talk one-on-one, and that it's not like rushed, and then that you have the time, because a lot of times in these types of discussions, like you have something that maybe is a little bit harder to talk about if you're just kind of passing by or at the coffee machine or something. So you kind of need that time to get there in the discussion, and so it's about having that time one-on-one that's really important, and I think it's important to reserve that time in the calendar. Yeah.
Do you think cooler talks are essential, or you would hush your team to get back to the work and not spend much time on that?
Which talks?
Cooler talks. When people go taking drink together and then standing somewhere and chatting?
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, that's just the normal thing that anyone wants to do, I hope. So I think it's not something you should try to suppress, of course.
And coming back to, so you had this one-on-one discussions with your teammates, and I wonder the content of those discussions. Was it always about work, or you could also talk about non-work related things?
Well, at least when I was a manager, it was like this, that, it was basically their time, and we can talk about anything they want, so I would say both work related or, the people are different. So, some people don't want to talk about anything personal at work, which is, fine. Some of them maybe do, or maybe they have some, not necessarily let's say, issue or challenge at work that's not as much related to the work itself, but it's kind of a personal thing with someone else in the team or in the company. So it could be that type of personal thing, or it could be, even in personal life as well, of course, because as a manager, that's part of your job as well to make sure that your employees are satisfied and they like their job and they're able to do their job well, so that's part of it for sure. Yeah.
So if we elaborate on that, where do you draw this borderline where you say, okay, that's enough, I'm not your counselor, and then you should go and ask help from the counselor? Have you had this kind of moments where you felt that this is not what I'm supposed to do? To go too much into the personal?
No, I haven't really felt like that, but sometimes, of course, you would have to maybe say if it's like a more serious problem, then I think it's okay if, just person to person, if I would say, like suggest that need to talk to a counselor or something. Yeah, sure, why not?
But are you also okay if your employee comes to you and it's clearly not purely work related, but I know some problems in the family? Will you cut the person and send to the counselor, or you would still listen and try to kind of console that person?
Absolutely listen, for sure, because that's a big part of being a manager. Like, you can look at it from either from the manager's perspective or from the employee's perspective. Like, if I'm an employee, I want to be able to go and talk to my manager about anything I want, and at any time, basically. Of course, okay, the time is one thing. Maybe it's not always possible, but I want to feel confident that I can go to my manager and talk with them, and that they will listen. Yeah.
But probably this requires a lot of trust. And let's say you're coming to a new team. The team was already formed and been working for some time, but you are a new manager in that team. How will you build trust?
Well, I think that that takes time, first of all. So it's going to take time, but for me, it's kind of maybe two main things. First of all is doing what you say you're gonna do. So like delivering on promises, you could say, and kind of just being yourself. Also, not that you you go to your manager one day and then the next day and you feel like it's two different people. So that helps to build trust, I think, for sure. Like yeah.
Have you had those situations where your manager comes to you and tells William, that some people came to me and said you did this and that, and could you please explain why you did this? Have you had those kind of situations?
You mean where someone comes to me talking about something that someone else did? Or
well, the feedback about you provided,
yeah,
but to your manager, and not directly to you, but to your manager, and then manager tells you this.
Okay. I don't recall having that. It could have been the case, but in that case, there's probably a reason why that person didn't want to tell me directly. So I think in that case, depending on what the problem is, I would go and try to talk to that person directly if I can.
And imagine the situation that there is one person, and he or she goes around and talks bad about you, complains about you, But then you go to that person and ask basically what's the problem, and then the person replies to you, everything's okay. How will you handle this situation?
I mean, probably wouldn't do very much at all, because I think that, if someone is going and talking bad about you or something, like, yourself, if you're doing bad things, and I think it's about, like, speaking through your actions, basically. So sometimes it's important what other people think about you, but usually it doesn't bother me too much. And especially if you really have the feeling that someone is kind of if it's not accurate what they're saying, then I think it's not worth it to get worked up about it. Just kind of let your actions speak for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And your deeds, let's say, like what you're doing. Yeah.
But could be also that the word goes in front of you, and it might be that you are losing the time before you can prove yourself, so to say. But if we speak about let's say giving a feedback, receiving and giving feedback, have you had the situations where you received the feedback, but it was so vague, and so it kind of really puzzled you? Have you had this kind of situations?
So if someone's giving feedback and it's doesn't seem very clear.
Yeah, they they like trying the best to tell, but then they say, "Oh, we need to keep it anonymous, and we cannot reveal the identity. We give you more details you got to know, and so we don't want any kind of retaliation." But this is like your feedback. Maybe the feedback is that, like they say, some people say that you are stubborn,
Mhm.
and that's it.
They might be right. But yeah, I mean, I think first of all, it's I'm always happy to get feedback at all, because it can be hard. Okay, like most of the time, people are maybe giving this negative feedback because something's wrong. They want to voice it, but of course, it's nice and valuable to get the good feedback too. And I think that's really important as a manager to give that good feedback, and of course, in detailed feedback, as detailed as possible. But in this case, you're mentioning about someone's saying that I'm stubborn, or I mean, I think it's the kind of thing that maybe you should, of course, talk about. If someone feels that way, then there's got to be some truth to it, and figure out how it's really bothering them, or because if someone, there's some things that someone may say about you. It may be true, but it's hard to do something about it because that's who you are. So you're. The answer to most questions is to communicate and talk about it. I think it solves a lot of problems.
But in the case when your manager comes and says, "Okay, this is not like my purely feedback, but some people say this,"
Mm-hmm.
then you don't know whom to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
It's but you also mentioned that some things are just, this is who you are, and how we draw this balance where you are continuously improving, listening to the feedback, and on the other hand, there is diversity and inclusion. Where we draw this balance that, okay, you need to change, and this is like valid request,
Mm-hmm.
or no, this is who you are, and I should not break you, and I just should be more inclusive and maybe like respect you.
I mean, I think in the end, um, that kind of depends on the work performance. So, like, what is this person's job? Like, what are the goals? And is this somehow affecting them meeting those goals? That's one thing. And on the other hand, of course, there's this, issue of conflicts and things like that. Like if someone's behavior is, causing conflicts, then that's something maybe a little more serious to address, depending on those conflicts. But in the end, it's like, okay, if someone says, okay, this person, they don't send, this note that they send after the meeting, it's really bad, and it's not very detailed, or something like this, or their attention to detail is very bad. But in the end, I think that may or may not be true, but it depends on the tasks and the goals and that person's role. Like if they're still able to perform in that role, then maybe that's just not who they are, is this person who has really, attention to detail and then, is recording and writing things. Maybe that's just not who they are, and maybe it's okay.
And if you continue with this feedback, and let's say this is kind of like final feedback, in the sense that you're letting the person go. Can you tell about the times when you had to let the people go? How did you do that?
I've never had to do that.
Lucky you.
So I can't comment.
But if you had to,
yeah. I mean, I would hope that there's a very good reason. Then I think it's easier. But if not, of course, it's very hard. And I think, I'm just imagining how this would go down. So maybe depends, like maybe the person is expecting it or not, or, if it's known that, there's going to be layoffs at a company, maybe it's a little bit easier. But if it just comes out of nowhere, it could be the type of thing where you're having this discussion and, you're letting them know. And then I think it's kind of need to be able to read people a little bit, how you respond, and I mean, maybe this topic of like empathy is important. So, think about how they might feel, and then, I think that'll help you how to handle those types of situations. Like if you know that, okay, you have to let someone go, and they want to understand why. So it's important, I think, to justify that, and maybe you could talk about their strengths, and like because obviously maybe it's too early, but obviously they're going to be looking for like a new job. So if you can somehow make them feel like you're on their side, which is at that point is probably very difficult, but that's I think really powerful. If people, you feel like you're on the same team and you're trying to help them. Yeah. Even if you're, letting them go. Still, at least for me, I try to have that same kind of approach, I think.
But that must be really tough, and I wonder how you make the person whom you're letting go to feel that you are on that person's side. Like, what will you say if we go into specifics?
I mean, maybe it's not my decision. That would be something I think. Okay, whether it is or not, I don't know. But if you if it's not your decision, then it's like something that you have to do. So maybe that's easier to understand. or yeah, it's very difficult for sure. Have you had to do this or?
Yeah, but it was during probation periods, so in that sense it was easier if it was not on probation. And yeah, that was the cases where I will say this is where I personally decided. It was those cases that I had, they were based on either team's input and or based on some kind of policies. For me, and I also want to ask you this, I actually notice you probably don't feel like you will try to get to the end and try to help as much as you can. So your kind of tolerance limit is quite big before you actually decide, no, I cannot do anything in the fire. Is it so?
You mean before actually coming to the point of having to fire someone?
Yes. I mean, you no, I need to give more chance. No, I need to give more chance. Is it like your style that?
I think it depends on the person and the job, and how they're going about fulfilling the things that they need to do. So, and of course, about the person themselves, if it's the type of person that's constantly causing conflicts, and it's not just what I'm seeing, but hearing it, then that can, like I said earlier, certainly be a factor as well. But I think it depends on, it depends on a lot of things, and it depends on, looking forward. Like, what are the prospects that you think this person is going to change? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, absolutely. And especially if person on probation period, you probably would be very careful during that period. But you also mentioned about these different scenarios where you had to let the person go. And one case is when clearly it's your decision. But then also situations where let's say many companies, they have different rules and they have different policies, and they have zero tolerance for that, zero tolerance for this and this. So they are kind of automatically triggered. And how would you agree that these rules, they need to be automatically applied? For instance, I can give an example that there was kind of maybe a random medical checkup, and it was found out that there was some drug in the blood. And but we know that this drug in the blood can stay for like 2 weeks, and maybe there was some kind of party and it was on the weekend, but the person was not sitting on the work, doing job fine, team is happy, but this thing happened. And then there is a rule. If we found, then automatically we have to. If you have a choice, like, so there is, let's say, in company you can report this before they letting know the HR or some other people. If you have this choice, considering what I told you, what will you do?
I mean, it kind of depends on. I'm saying it depends a lot, but I mean, it really does. It depends on the person and how valuable they are for the organization. Honestly, like
the person is valuable team is fine, doing job fine, but they found in blood drugs.
Yeah, I don't see if it isn't affecting the everyday work. For me as a manager, I think it's not a problem. But then again, the company has this zero tolerance policy, so it kind of depends. But I think in reality, in a lot of cases, that type of situation is going to be up to the manager. But who knows?
So to understand correctly, that there are rules, but we don't need always to follow them blindly. We need to go case by case. To understand correctly, yeah.
I think for sure it depends on who you ask. Though, if you're talking about some processes and things like this, then maybe it's a different answer. But yeah, I think rules are very important, and but if you're gonna always blindly follow the rules, it's maybe not the best approach. Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically two extremes. One extreme to be very principled, and on the other hand, this empathy and humanness. But of course, I think you agree. Some discipline probably is needed.
Yeah.
And speaking about the goals, so you go to all managers meeting, and you're getting from your CEO strategy. This is like really high level vision strategy, and then you have there a team of engineers. How will you translate this strategy to them? Or will you just straight away reproduce the same thing which you heard from the top management?
No, I think if you have this kind of very high level strategy, like the most important thing is that you understand and your employees understand why they're doing what they're doing in their everyday work, and how their everyday work specifically contributes to that strategy. So yeah, those are kind of the two most important things, I think.
So to understand you correctly, it's like breaking it down to specific targets or tasks for the team.
I think so, yeah.
And if we go back to your experience, in your career, you've been in many different companies, and you did lots of different projects. What was what was that project which makes you very much proud, like the best achievement in your career, so to say?
I would say probably what I did at Ericsson, because when I started there, it was a completely new function in the factory, and when I left, it started with nothing, and not completely nothing, but very very little. And when I left a few years, 5.5 years later, I was the manager of the department that was, the function that I started in. So we developed and founded this new department with like six or seven employees, and even we had like a big lab with a lot of thermal chambers and equipment like that. So, and also this kind of we had really increased the importance and the visibility of this new role and function and capability in the factory globally within Ericsson, which is, a huge company. So I think that was kind of maybe the thing I'm most proud of so far. And yeah.
Was it a steep learning curve? Because looking at your career and what I saw on LinkedIn, by the way, your LinkedIn is quite detailed and nicely well described. But in your LinkedIn, I noticed for most of career you were in the energy sector, working in Siemens with the gas turbines and North Carolina State University in the energy audits. And then in Ericsson, you got reliability part. How different that was?
Well, the main difference was being in, let's say, the electronics world, because that was completely new to me. Not only electronics manufacturing, but just being around all of these electronics engineers and people in mechatronics and electronics and things like that in the factory. So that was kind of the biggest change. In the factory itself, the electronics manufacturing part was new for me, but doing the energy audits at North Carolina State University, I was used to being at, manufacturing facilities, different factories. So that part was not so new. But the thing, it kind of made it good for me in Ericsson because, my background is in mechanical engineering and specifically thermal sciences. So that's kind of like very foreign to to a lot of the electronics people, if you will. So I was able to kind of come in and provide that immediate value by having a different way and a new way of looking at things, and it really relates with electronics. The number one stress factors temperature and changes in temperature, so that was really related to things that I've done before, and this type of testing, which I did at Siemens with the gas turbines. I was testing the gas turbines using measured equipment and different models and things like that. So all of that was very like it applied very well to the new position at Ericsson. And also this kind of having to say, okay, what type of equipment do we need, and like ordering it, and working with customers. So that's a kind of with clients who are buying things from. That also is kind of, I've been used to doing that. And this thing about the chambers need different types of cooling and ventilation and things like that. Even liquid nitrogen. So all of these kind of things were the one I had seen before from working on site at the power plants and in these and in the factories before that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned about this electronics and this kind of tests, the test beds that you made. And if you look into future and if you look at the trends when it comes to validating verifications, what I think will be taking over, this mathematical modeling and simulations, or frequent prototyping and testing?
I mean, I think it has to be both. I mean, it's kind of two different fields almost. You have the using the mathematical modeling and things like that. It gives you a good idea of where to start the prototyping, and as you develop the prototypes, then you change that model, because it's kind of going in parallel, I would say, because using the model, it helps you to develop the prototypes, and developing the prototypes helps you to improve the model.
So basically, this is the iterative process where they're both connected. And you mentioned about mechanical engineering and electronics. And have you heard about mechatronics field?
Yes.
So, do you think these engineers who studying this mechatronics and going into the field, they are beneficial for the for developing new solutions, or for like any kind of engineering team, or you'd rather have you're a mechanical engineer, you're an electronics engineer, those experts who are deep into their area?
It depends on the like type of thing that you're doing. If let's say if we're talking about the Ericsson factory, for instance, I think, or any type of factory where they have this kind of let's say assembly using some type of robots or using robots. I think the mechatronics is extremely useful because it's much more specific than, for instance, mechanical engineering. That's like a much broader field, let's say. Whereas mechatronics is very focused. I think that's exactly the type of person that you want to have working in a factory, for instance. Well, when I say working in a factory, I mean designing the factories, basically. And in Ericsson, they also happen to be working in the factory. So in this case. But yeah, if you think electronics engineer, they're doing something a little bit different, looking specifically at the electronics, whereas a mechanical engineer, okay, well, I'm a mechanical engineer, so for me, it's like very broad scope. But if you think about, designing the mechanics and things like this, I mean, if we talk about the Ericsson factory case, then for sure, a mechatronics engineer, I think, is very valuable. It's very practical, I think.
It's I would say unusual to hear that that mechatronics, you say, have a focus. Usually, perception is that mechatronics are wide, and it's like a thin knowledge spread. But I understand your point that even when it comes to manufacturing, so this is like the narrow scope in that sense. And for mechanical engineering, but mechanical engineering definitely is a wide field. When did you pick? So you focus on the thermal part of it, thermal management, and was it from the beginning that you picked this, or how have you decided to pick from mechanical engineering specifically thermal management?
It's the thermal sciences. Yeah. So, well, this is stuff like fluid dynamics, heat transfer, thermodynamics, so things like this. But maybe it's just at my university, but there's I think in mechanical engineering in general, there's kind of like mechanical sciences and thermal sciences. And for me, it kind of just happened that way, honestly. I think it was probably, something that was developing during my undergraduate studies, during the bachelor studies, because during the bachelor studies, you take a lot of everything, statics and dynamics, heat transfer, thermodynamics, so on both, let's say, sides of the spectrum. But I think by the end of the bachelor's, I had kind of figured out like what I was better at and what I was more interested in. And then by the time I went to do the master's, then that was more focused on the thermal sciences.
I think you picked one of the hardest, if not the hardest, fields, because I know from my educational experience studying fluid mechanics, it's a lot of assumptions there, because it's really hard to characterize the movements of fluids. Yeah. But and I'm in that case, I'm very impressed how all these simulations are done for the planes and. we started speaking about mechanical engineering and then what different fields in mechanical engineering, electronics, engineering, mechatronics. But then on your LinkedIn page, what I noticed that you follow called IFWI. And
Sorry, I didn't understand.
On your LinkedIn page, among the companies that you follow, it was called IFWI.
How do you spell it?
It's basically like this programming school. Which opened in the Eastern Estonia.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is it you supporting the cause, or it is that you attended the school, or is that you're interested in programming?
Everything you said, except for I'm not interested in attending the school, but just because, well, I wouldn't do it, but it's kind of a little late for that, maybe, for me. But I think this is like a really cool thing that they're doing, is kind of in Estonia, somewhere outside of Tallinn, creating this type of school that's there's so many jobs in IT, let's say, and there's really high demand for these workers. So I think it's really great that they're building the school up in Eastern Estonia. And actually they recently announced that they're going to open another one in South Estonia in Võru. So that's pretty exciting as well. It seems like it's going very well for them, because it was started by these among other people, these founders of Bolt, and so they themselves realized the need, and they're trying to solve that, and while I think doing something very good for Estonia. But it's also because I'm interested in programming. So I took years of programming in high school, and even when I went into the university, I wanted to major in computer science, but I didn't. And coding is something that I can do quite well, and I've been doing it in all my jobs, even if I'm not a programmer. I've been using it for different tasks and things like that to automate things, make things easier. Especially at Ericsson, I started doing it even more because, we were in the lab, and, we have to create these automated tests for the products. So we were using that and coding and, writing like log reader scripts and things like this. So it's something that I'm really interested in also. So that's why I follow them.
And what is your technology stack? What programming language you mainly use?
Well, when I was in high school, I started out with the very first one was Fortran, of course. No, sorry. Even before that was Pascal and Fortran, and then in high school it took like 3 or 4 years of advanced C++. And I've used Python at Ericsson, for instance, and also, Ericsson has their own programming language, shale, so I used that one. And I've done things with like HTML and PHP and SQL and things like that, building some types of tools and websites and stuff like that.
The language that you mentioned, it leads me to the topic of data science, because this is especially when you say SQL nowadays, and especially if you take mechanical engineers, do you think it's essential for the engineers who are not from the IT background, didn't have this experience, to know how to program, to know how to work with this data science? So basically, preparing this data, visualizing this data, is it essential nowadays?
I don't think it's essential, but it's a very useful skill to have, depending on the role, of course. There's a reason why, at least in my engineering school, why they teach like a basic programming, because it's extremely useful. So it's the kind of thing where I don't think it's needed for every role, but it's certainly a benefit to have, and for some roles, it's definitely needed.
And you wanted to go into computer science, then you didn't. What was the reason you didn't pursue it?
I don't remember. At that time, you're like 18 years old, going to the university, and
Computer science, mechanical engineering, kind of on different spectrum.
yeah, well, yeah, kind of, yes. Yeah.
And you also did worked in different countries, in United States, in Germany, in Estonia, and also in Siemens. You were working in France and Italy. If you compare with Estonia, what would be the closest work environment, and what are the differences between all of them?
It's a very hard question to answer. I've lived in different places. For me, it all like blends together a little bit. But I mean, the differences in culture and the ways of working and things like that, it's sometimes quite hard to describe. But I would say, you say the closest one to Estonia, I want to say in the U.S., but I'm not so sure about that, because actually I have much more experience working in Europe than in the U.S. Because I think Estonians and Americans have this kind of same kind of very goal-oriented thinking about how they go about the working and like everyday tasks, whereas maybe in Germany or in Sweden, okay, I've never lived in Sweden, but I've worked a lot with Swedish people. It's more kind of focused on the process, maybe. And there's like pluses and minuses to both of those. So it's just different ways that people work, and I think you can't say which one is better or worse.
But if you personally had to choose, which work environment you would prefer the most?
Well, I like working in Estonia because I'm here now. But I think the best way is like maybe somewhere in between, or if you think of it like a toolbox, sometimes you take this tool and sometimes the other one. So it depends. Like I think. But again, that's the benefit of having worked in these different types of work cultures is kind of understanding these different approaches, and maybe if you've been there, then maybe you understand better when to take one approach and when the other approach, or maybe not, but I hope so.
And now you're working in this Ragn-Sells OSA project. Could you please describe more what are you trying to achieve in this project? What value eventually you want to bring to people?
Well, what we want to achieve is would be one of the biggest circular economy projects in Europe. So in Eastern Estonia, they've been burning oil shale for the past 50 or 60 years for electricity production. And this creates a lot of waste, if you will. So this is put into ash hills, which are in Eastern Estonia. Like there's something like 600 million tons of ash in Eastern Estonia. So And our project is about reusing that deposited ash to create something useful for to create something useful for the industry, which in this case, the first step is to create calcium carbonate, which is it's used widely in different plastics, flooring material, paints, and so there's many different uses, even vegan milk. So our project, they have these huge ash mountains in Eastern Estonia. So our project has the potential to ultimately remove all of those ash hills and we turn it into something useful. So it's freeing that space back up. And it's one of the biggest circular economy projects in Europe. So, it's kind of being an example and showing that something like this is possible. Taking something that was thought to be just waste and using it as a raw material, and that's kind of our vision. And Ragn-Sells' vision is that showing that this type of these types of projects and work is it's good for the earth and it's good for business as well.
But you said this deposited ash, and if so now I believe still there is a lot of oil ash burned, but if there is no burning anymore, how many years more you can use this deposit of ash to convert this into the material you mentioned?
Well, currently we're designing and planning for a demo plant, but the next step after that will be our commercial plant, and this one we expect to use somewhere between 1 and 2 million tons of ash per year. So if there's 600 million tons of ash, then this is enough material for hundreds of years. So, but maybe if it's very successful, there's the opportunity to build more than one factory, because the raw material is there, it's sitting in piles, and our technology can even potentially be used for other calcium containing feedstocks like steel slag and things like that. So there's a lot of potential all over Europe.
Thank you. And the last question in this job interview is, what is your salary expectation?
Well, this is I think this type of question, I go under the interview phase, sorry, but is it's going to come in a lot of job interviews. I think maybe not always the first one, but it's something you should kind of do a little bit of research in advance, and of course know what your own expectations are. So and depending on the job that you currently have and the job you're applying for, it's like how much do you hate your current job or how much do you love the job, so that can maybe you have an expectation but there's less is offered than that, but because this job sounds amazing, you take it anyway. But if going to another country, or if you think of people coming to Estonia and applying for jobs, it's a little bit harder, I think, for them to know about the tax system and salary system. So it's a little bit tricky to ask this type of question in an interview. But the most important thing, I think, is to just you should have thought about it and be able to answer something instead of just acting like you've never thought about it.
Thank you. And so we are finishing with the job interview, and now it's time for the feedback. By the way, you didn't take any drink. You were drinking a bit of tea.
Yeah.
But feel free to take one. So, how do you feel? What are your impressions from this job interview?
I thought that I think it went pretty well. For me, it's always important to kind of be yourself in the interview, and to be prepared for sure. And of course, it's much easier to go into a job interview where it's something you're very passionate about, and you can really explain like why they should select you for the job, how your work experience is related to the job, and in the beginning, I thought that this part about feedback was kind of I was like, okay, are they going to ask me any like technical questions or anything like that? So it seemed like in the interview, that it was more focused on the kind of soft skills, and less on the specifics of designing this amazing piece of technology that you shared with me. Yeah.
But if you are hiring a manager, will you more look into the soft skills, or what will be more important for you, soft skills or the technical skills?
It really depends on what that person is going to be doing. So before the interview, if you're doing the interview, you need to know what exactly is that person going to be doing, and how their experience will have prepared them for that. So and I think you should have questions ready, like specific questions that you have. Maybe you feel like some information is missing, or maybe you want to ask, how one position or project, relates to what they would be doing in this role. So, you need to be prepared also, I think, from the interviewer side, for sure.
But still, let's say if it's an engineering team and you're getting the manager, but let's say you look through the CV, you do screening, and there is lots of experience in engineering, and that person was an engineer, but now applying for the manager position. Do you still think it's valid to challenge and ask these technical questions, or basically this is fine and you will just focus on the people skills, soft skills?
I think if it's for a management position, maybe it's okay to focus more on the soft skills. If we talk about not specifically for a manager position, but just in general about these kind of technical questions in the interview, I'm not a big fan of those personally. If I'm doing the interview, if I'm going to do that, then I would rather give it as like some type of assignment to do, because I don't know. I think it's kind of not the best way to judge someone's capabilities, how they're able to answer some random technical question, on the spot in the interview. But in terms, if it's about a manager, then I think it's like, I guess this interview was, I think more focused on the soft skills. Of course, it depends on they still need to have a good understanding of the let's say the field that their team is working in or what they're working on. So I think it's wise to dig into that a little bit, but for the manager positions, I think your primary job is to manage the employees and to be a leader and to drive them to be motivated and to meet the goals and exceed the goals. So I think that's kind of the most important thing about being a manager, is really the people skills. Of course, it depends on the exact position.
But if you recall your experience when you were applying for the manager position, was it similar to this interview or very different?
Well, in that case, if we're talking about when I became the manager of the reliability engineering department at Ericsson, I mean, I had already been in that team, an engineer and a senior engineer. So in that case, it was kind of already proven that I was like from the technical side, there's no problem with that. So it's definitely more about the let's say
Soft skills.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you had to give advice to the person who is watching us right now, listening to us right now, there are many different people, with different background. But let's say the person who is now watching us is engineer who wants to become a leader, maybe in the beginning of career or in the middle. What advice will you give to that person?
The first thing is, if you're like an engineer and you want to become a manager, you have to be ready and willing to kind of sacrifice some of the engineering work, because like I said earlier, in my view, the manager, it's more about managing the people. Like, it's less about doing the actual engineering work. So it has to be kind of I mean, if you're not a people person, of course, it's always possible to improve that. But being a manager, it's a lot about the people. So I think it's important that you think about whether that's something that you want to do. And but in the end, it's about being yourself. So if you're really not a people person, I think you can still be a good manager and a good leader. Maybe it takes a little more work, but I think these kind of people soft skills and communication and being organized, those are maybe some of the most important things I would say that you should work on and think about if you want to be a manager.
Thank you. That was William Buescher in the episode of Leaders and Engineers. Thank you for watching and listening us.
Thanks.